hearing from the new chief of Border Patrol's Tucson sector.
Until there's some sort of legislative change, we're going to be in this quagmire.
A southern Arizona ocean offers a model that could help the world's coral reefs.
It is this like Goldilocks of scale, if you will.
And a push to get more PIMA County children into quality preschools.
It's children who are at risk who benefit most from high-quality preschool.
Hello and welcome to Arizona 360. I'm Lorraine Rivera. Thank you for joining us. This week we're hearing from the new leader of Border Patrol's Tucson sector. Chief Patrol Agent Roy Villarreal came on the job about a month ago to oversee the sector's 3,900 agents. In his 30 years with the agency, he helped launch the Border Safety Initiative, which includes BORSTAR, Border Patrol Search, Trauma, and Rescue Team. Our crew met Villarreal in the West Desert, where BORSTAR is preparing for rising temperatures. Good morning. Our meeting spot was at the 3-Point substation.
Thanks for doing this.
From there, Villarreal drove us south along Highway 286.
For the longest time, Tucson sector was the epicenter of all things border security. From the perspective that the volume of illegal migration, the flow of illicit narcotics, and the heightened threat that existed at the border anywhere along the southwest border is right here in Arizona.
Before coming to Tucson, he served in Yuma, El Centro, San Diego, and Washington, D.C. Now, as Chief Patrol Agent of the Tucson sector, he's also the commander of Joint Task Force West, overseeing Arizona's entire border with Mexico to include the Yuma sector. The day before our ride, agents apprehended more than 1,000 people in both sectors in 24 hours. Large groups are the new normal that strain existing resources.
When you have 100 people or 100 plus, I've got to allocate anywhere from 4 to 6 vans, upwards of 10 to 12 agents, to go and secure that group of aliens, transport them back to a place where we can temporarily house them and then get them to a station for processing. That is a logistical problem, but it's also a border security problem in that now I have 10 to 12 agents that are removed from the field. And so what's being lost in this situation is the aspect that a lot of people are looking at this as, well, it's just family units. It's just mom and dad and women and children. But that draw away from border security means that it leaves the rest of the border wide open. So although here in Tucson, about 25, maybe 30% of the people that we're witnessing are these family units, there's still upwards of 75 to 80% of the people that we're catching that are still actively trying to elude arrest.
That includes 16 convicted sex offenders apprehended along Arizona's border last month. Each is a foreign national who committed a sex crime while in the U.S. For individuals and groups that don't immediately surrender to agents, technology plays a big role in the agency's defense and depth strategy of intercepting people and contraband miles north of the border.
Here in Tucson, we have 261 miles. It'd be impossible to place an agent every mile 24/7. So we have to utilize technology. And technology, it's a force multiplier for us. The vehicle behind us enables a single agent to cover 10 miles of border, 10 miles of an area. The system itself, it scans every 10 seconds and it covers 10 miles, and it tracks and identifies any anomalies, people that are walking, vehicles that are driven across the border, and then it will enable the operator to relay to the agent in the field there's something that needs to be investigated, and then that agent responds. So for us, these are force multipliers.
Like other sectors along the Southwest, agents are seeing record numbers of migrants from Central America that include small children.
Is it a crisis?
Absolutely. It's both a humanitarian and a border security crisis. Humanitarian from the perspective that we're talking about family units. We're talking about mom, dad, and little kids. And when I say little kids, everything from a newborn upwards of 17 years old. And it's not only the family unit that we're witnessing along the southwest border, it's unaccompanied children. Children between the ages of 5 and 17 that show up at our border by themselves. This year alone, we've already arrested over 60,000 unaccompanied children. So put it in perspective, as a parent, could you imagine allowing your 5-year-old to travel from Central America by him or herself all the way up to the United States? I can't comprehend that. It boggles my mind. That demographic, that vulnerable demographic of family units and unaccompanied children is what is causing our system to grind to a halt. Our facilities, the detention, the laws were all designed principally for single adults. There used to be a relief mechanism because the alien that we were arresting back in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s was principally from Mexico. And that person was processed and returned back to Mexico via a voluntary return within a day. Today's demographic is not the same. 1 million people means that they are in our system, they've flooded the system, they've overwhelmed that system. There is no relief valve. And so until there is some sort of legislative change, we're going to be in this quagmire in that we can't adjust quickly enough to address the flow. We can't adjust quickly enough to make sure that it's addressed appropriately. So we really need legislative change, and we need a whole of government approach towards this.
Villarreal also oversees the Nogales station. The city of Nogales made headlines for its multiple strands of concertina wiring along the border. City leaders have condemned the wire's placement, which Villarreal has no plans to remove.
There has been the placement of concertina wire along the entire southwest border in particular locations. We looked at what the vulnerabilities were, what the threats were, where we thought that may be exploited, and that's where we placed the wire. I was in San Diego at the time when the caravan first arrived. Without that, I think we would have been overrun in November when there was about 1,000 people that attempted to cross the border illegally. In this case, it was placed in areas that we felt required it, a threat existed, and then we also mitigated to make sure that there was no threat on the north side of the border.
Where some people see that it's excessive, it's really strategic and tactical from your perspective. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. So what we learned in San Diego, if you place a single strand of wire on top of the fence, it's going to be cut, it's going to be removed, in some way it will be defeated by the smugglers on the south side of the border. And so what we've learned is if you use multiple strands of wire, it's more effective, it's not compromised, and it's got durability. There isn't a singular solution to...
After speaking with Villarreal, we connected with Biosphere, a specialized unit developed under the agency's border safety initiative that couples border enforcement with humanitarian aid. With Biosphere's deputy commander Kelly Kirby, we hopped in a Razor, a type of ATV used to navigate the desert terrain. Our destination was east of the Bavakivari Mountains. Biosphere relies on data from previous years to decide where to position agents for a quicker response during the summer months.
So for the summer operations, because we generally have, obviously because of the heat, we have higher numbers of rescues and deaths. We do a data analysis of where the enforcement pattern is, where we see the most traffic flow, and we also compare it to past years. And this year we did a 3-year stance of where the rescues and deaths have occurred for the past 3 years. We map pattern that so that we can see a concentration of where we need our agents. Since we're in a finite resource, we want them working enforcement in the best posture to prevent people from getting into the worst areas. And that being said, by being there in those areas, they have the fastest response times for any rescues or med calls that they can get to.
On the Tohono O'odham Reservation, Bavakivari Peak ranges in elevation from 4,500 feet to nearly 8,000. Its remoteness and proximity to the border make it a common route for traffickers, but also a potentially treacherous one.
The groups that come up from the west side of the Bavakivari mountain range, they come up and they come through passes. So they'll come up to avoid detection and get away from the technology as best they can, and then they'll cross over and drop down. So we see them on both sides of these mountains.
I think most people who hike or enjoy the outdoors would have trouble crossing that. What is the condition of the person that you normally encounter?
It varies. If they're just illegal immigrants coming through, we've got everything from young adult males to family groups to women, children. We also see a lot of drug traffic in this area, and those guys that are packing in drugs are very well conditioned and athletic. They can handle this no problem. But you do start getting concerns when the smuggling groups or the guides take them into areas that puts them at higher risk. And these would be definitely some of those areas because just the altitude, how dry it is, and where they're coming from.
Last year, Biosphere made 275 rescues and responded to 350 medical calls. We saw them in action firsthand when Kirby's team got a call about a Guatemalan man who waved down a car on the side of the highway.
and he was hiding from agents, so they actually came and found him. They went under the road here on the highway and found him laying face down under the culvert. Upon interview, he said he's been 6 days out here without food or water. Based on his vitals and how much fluid he's taking, I mean, if he would not have been located or not given up, probably 2 days max that he would have survived.
30 miles north of the border?
Yes.
How is it that he managed to go this far without getting to this point?
I mean, our resources get strapped. Just as an example, if he was a group, I'm not sure, I haven't asked him yet, if he was a group of 8 to 10 people and some of our technology spotted that group and agents responded and made apprehensions, and they only were able to apprehend 6. Well, those agents are now tied up with those 6. If there were 2 remaining, and it could be the case that he was part of 2 remaining that had walked away and continued. So you're not always going to get them all, and the tactics they're using now where they break into small groups is harder for us to work with because you're working with a smaller number of people.
To support Biosphere, there are more than 200 agents in the sector who are certified as emergency medical technicians or paramedics. Kirby was part of the second group of agents to complete Biosphere training in the sector. He described how challenges have evolved over time and how the team continues to adapt to new situations.
I came in the Border Patrol in '98, and traffic flow obviously was pretty high back then. So we've definitely seen an influx of control. So the border is more controlled now than I think it ever has been, even with the recent uptick with the caravan concerns. But I've seen the traffic numbers go down. I've seen the technology usage and the number of agents and infrastructure that we had for the Border Patrol increase.
Are your Biosphere agents, or perhaps the agency in general, prepared for the influx of Central American migrants, to include children who'll be crossing through some unique terrain given the weather is about to change?
Yes, I believe so. I've voiced my concerns earlier, and as a team, we know that the majority of these people are coming from a tropic or subtropic environment into this arid environment, which increases the risk. They've also traveled a long way to get here. I think the sector is prepared. It's got measures in place, as well as we've handled the influx back when we had the crisis with the Guatemalan children coming up from Central America, when we handled it back 4 or 5 years ago. So they have measures in place, we have prior practices, and I think they're prepared to respond to it.
Many immigrants from Central America say they fled economic hardships. In countries like Guatemala, agricultural woes have led to food scarcity and prompted questions about the role of climate change in immigration patterns. We explored this concept with Todd Miller, a Tucson-based author who covered this subject in his 2017 book titled Storming the Wall: Climate Change, Migration, and Homeland Security.
Economic hardships are very much playing out in places around Central America, for example, Guatemala and Honduras. When you look at, the rate of poverty in Guatemala at 60%, and it even goes up further in rural areas, maybe 70 or 80%, and a lot of extreme poverty. But what we've been seeing primarily in the last 10 years is changes in the weather patterns, which are really going to affect people in rural areas who are already suffering from poverty. And these changes are affecting small farmers who will plant their seeds, and then the rain perhaps doesn't come, and the harvest doesn't come, and the crops don't come, and then there's suddenly a food crisis.
How long has this been occurring for?
As far as the climate modeling that some climate scientists have been doing in Central America, what I've heard in my research is that in the last 10 years or so, they've been seeing droughts increasing in frequency and intensity throughout various places in Central America. Of course, they were happening before then. Of course, there's a natural variability, that sometimes droughts are going to happen. But what scientists have been seeing in their modeling is this increasing and more frequent. And then what happens is then rains become much less reliable. And for a small farmer in Guatemala or a small farmer in Honduras who have their own farmers' almanacs, right? They rely on this rain to come at a certain time, and then they plant and it doesn't come. And then they have no irrigation, right? There's not an irrigation system or anything like that. And that's what we're seeing more and more of coming into the present. And as the scientists have told me, will increase into the future if things stay the same.
If climate change has really been a factor for perhaps the last 5 to 10 years, what do you attribute the sudden influx to over the last year or so?
it's real difficult to parse out how many people are coming directly because of climate change. Often there's multiple factors of why people are coming north, each person with their individual story even. However, what I can say is that there's pre-existing problems. There's even pre-existing crises of economic crises where people are living in day to day or not without enough cash to survive us or to endure an emergency situation or a political situation of some sort or various things. We could talk all day about what are the converging issues, but what happens is when the changing climate comes into these converging issues, it exacerbates them. So somebody is living in economic hardship, a climate change situation such as a drought or such as you're a coffee farmer and La Roya or the fungus on the coffee, which scientists are attributing to climate change, ruins your coffee crop, or you live on the coast and the sea's coming in, you can no longer live on the coast, or a storm surge comes in with one of the hurricanes or the mudslide or a flood, that then all of a sudden, you're in a situation. So how much of that goes in, that sort of displacement enters into, the different people coming north? I'm surely is a factor. It's really, though, difficult to say how much of a factor it is, or is it a principal factor, or is it affecting all the other existing problems? That's what it's hard to quantify.
Sticking to the issue of climate change and how it's affecting the Earth's oceans, researchers are studying it here in the desert. The University of Arizona is in the early stages of an experiment inside Biosphere 2. Christopher Conover has a look.
When you think of a coral reef, most people think of something like this. Someday the ocean at the Biosphere 2 may look like that again, but that's not the case right now.
If you take a closer look at the Biosphere 2 ocean right now, it kind of looks like what we think reefs might look like in the future.
The algae-covered rocks, a sign of an unhealthy system, were not an accident at Biosphere 2, however.
The most remarkable experiment ever done at the Biosphere was when the CO2 concentration inside the Biosphere was ramped up to about 400 ppm. This was about 25 years ago when the concentration of CO2 in our atmosphere was about 360. And it was clearly shown that at 400 ppm, the ocean acidified, the corals just all died. So that was the death of the Biosphere's ocean in a very worthwhile experiment.
The carbon dioxide level in the atmosphere worldwide is 405 parts per million as of August 2018, according to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. Those levels, combined with higher temperatures in the world's oceans, are causing global coral die-offs. The B2 ocean shows what our ocean could look like in the future. Scientists are now trying to save the ocean under glass in hopes of helping corals on a global scale.
Now the state of the science is ready for a place like the Biosphere 2, and we're bringing together leading scientists from all over the world who have developed these solutions, and we're going to test them here in the Biosphere.
Scale is very, very important in science. When you have experiments in a flower pot and then you go to the field, it's like two different planets.
It is this like Goldilocks of scale, if you will.
The ocean under glass at Biosphere 2 has a volume of nearly 1 million gallons and has functioned for decades. This is what it looked like 6 years ago, making it perfect for scaling up experiments conducted in more traditional labs. Scientists are getting ready to begin the restoration experiment, but first they must get baseline data from the B2 ocean.
We're testing, in a process called bioremediation, what it takes to tip the balance from what is currently an algae-dominated reef to a healthy coral reef.
Oh yeah.
Beautiful.
That bioremediation starts now, tied to Earth Month celebrations.
We're adding organisms into this system that will help us eat the algae that we have in here right now, with the idea that these animals that we're going to be adding will be a part of the community that we're establishing in this ocean.
Everything that goes into the ocean at B2 must have a purpose.
So for example, the emerald crabs that we're adding, they are amazing algae eaters. We have them in the tank right next to me here, and they eat algae so quickly. So we know that they're going to be great additions to our system because they'll help us in this initial phase. They'll help us with the eating of the algae, but they also aren't a threat to the corals, and they aren't going to impact the community in a large way when we put other things in here. So they'll be able to live in harmony with the other organisms that we plan to put in the system.
The science team is working carefully to determine what will work best, right down to what corals they plan to add.
All right. We'll probably start with some corals from our partners that they're growing in their labs right now as a phase 1, but eventually we'll be identifying the species that we want to target from the natural systems. We have the opportunity to actually put corals together that aren't naturally together in a natural ecosystem and see how they react to each other. How does their microbiome change?
Algae takes over reefs in the real ocean when certain animals disappear due to changes in the environment or overfishing. So the bioremediation has real-world applications. Scientists hope to have the first corals in the B2 system within a year.
A newly proposed program in PIMA County would eventually help thousands of children attend quality preschools. It's backed by the people behind a failed ballot initiative in 2016 that would have created a similar program in the city of Tucson. The PIMA County Preschool Investment Program would offer scholarships for all 3- and 4-year-olds whose family fall under 200% of the federal poverty level. For example, a family of 4 earning less than $50,000 a year would qualify. Supporters say once it's fully funded, the program would serve more than 10,000 children. But to start, they're asking the Pima County Board of Supervisors to set aside $5 million in its budget for the upcoming fiscal year. We learned more about the program from Steve Lynn with the Southern Arizona Leadership Council and Penelope Jacks with Strong Start Tucson. Tell me how Pima County manages this. I mean, it's going to come at a cost. What does it exactly look like? How does it work?
Well, what we're asking the county to do is to initiate for the first time an expansion, if you will, of the First Things First, Quality First program. First Things First, as you may know, is a state agency, and it has tobacco tax money, and they're already providing scholarships for quality early childhood education. This would increase that program by providing more scholarship dollars from the county rather than the tobacco tax. And we would use the same criteria for eligibility. We would put them in the same kinds of programs that are already serving the children from First Things First. And they've done their own evaluations to tell us for certain that this program works. So we know it's a good investment for the people of Pima County and for the children of Pima County.
I'd just like to circle back a moment. There are about 27,000 3- and 4-year-olds in Pima County. Half of those kids live under 200% of the poverty level. So it really makes a big dent if we could reach all of those children. Of that half, 70% are children of color. So we know that it's children who are at risk who benefit most from high quality preschool.
You've said high quality now. Is there such a thing as just poor quality? Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. That Arizona has a very good rating system. It's 0 to 5 stars, and high quality is thought to be 3 to 5 stars, or national accreditation, or Head Start also counts. But it's very clear, and Arizona does a very good job in that area.
So how do we afford all this as a county? We come together as taxpayers. What does this look like?
Well, out of the existing county budget, which is over $1 billion, we're asking the county to start with a very modest amount that would work for a couple of hundred of these children to start with. And we want to prove that this can happen at scale. So it means that if we're successful, we can go back to the county for multiple year funding and increases in funding. Because as Penelope said, with the percentage of children who are in poverty in Pima County, if we don't attack this problem soon, what we will have is a next generation and a next generation of children who will not be successful in school, therefore they will not be able to get good jobs, therefore they will be a burden to taxpayers rather than contributory to our society. That's what we're looking for long term, is that kind of success.
And there's great evidence that says for every dollar you spend on high quality preschool, the community reaps up to $16 over time. So the return on investment is very high, better than any blue chip stock that anyone invests in.
So are you saying that prior to this, for the families that haven't been able to afford early childhood education programs, this is what we're seeing right now unravel in our economy? I mean, could it have been better? Could what we see right now be different?
Well, First Things First has made a dent. There's no question about it. But as everyone knows, the tobacco tax is a diminishing resource as fewer and fewer people smoke. And so the amount of money that First Things First has been able to put into scholarships has either been constant in some areas or diminished in other areas. We also know there's other federal funding that just recently has been cut off. And so a number of children who have been in quality settings may not be able to afford it now because the subsidy from the federal government has been reduced and eliminated.
One stat that I read said that nearly half of all kids, by the time they get into kindergarten, are not ready. What's at stake if this fails yet again?
Well, what's at stake is that we say to another cohort of children, not you. You aren't the ones who are going to succeed in school, and you aren't the ones who have the best chance to succeed in life. What's at stake is a whole group of children. Every year, it's another thousands and thousands of kids. We say, not you.
When we think about early childhood education, obviously cost is a factor, but are we putting enough responsibility on the families to say, you need to do your part? I mean, we can't just send your child to school during the day. There's a component of the family that needs to occur after hours.
You know, it's a great point, but with the families that we're talking about, there are two elements to those families, many of whom are working multiple jobs just to keep food on the table and a roof over their heads. They need both health care and child care in order to be able to maintain their employment. And so the target population that we're talking about would benefit greatly if someone were able to say to them, your child can go not just to any center, but a center where they're going to be prepared for kindergarten and for school beyond that. And all you need to do is continue working hard like you've been doing to provide other things for your family. But this is one of those things that would be provided that would be great relief to the families that we're talking about. When we get to 3- and 4-year-olds, we want them to come to school ready to succeed. And if you talk to kindergarten teachers, they can tell you within a week which of their children have had quality preschool and which ones haven't.
We're short on time, but I do want to ask you, if this goes through, this changes the quality of life here in this region, it improves it? Both of you agree to that?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. There's almost nothing a community can do for itself better than investing in its young children.
Okay. My thanks to both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all for now. Thanks for joining us. Be sure to visit us on social media to share your feedback and let us know what you think. We'll see you next week.